Hello, fifth graders. This is Mrs. Schrader-Shook here with your English Language Arts GATE activity for the week. This week is very exciting because it's the first time Virtual Academy students and hybrid students are working on the same activity in the week. So you can see that this activity is called Analogies number 1 because you will also be getting future Analogies activities later on in the year. And so this one is our first one, and it says Considering Relationships. Let's get started. So what is an analogy? An analogy is a comparison between two things. In order to be able to solve analogies, you need to consider relationships. So you have to look at relationships between the first two items, and then you're going to establish the same relationship between the next two items in the analogy. Here is an example of a completed analogy. Humdrum is to monotonous as extraneous is to foreign. The colon right here between humdrum and monotonous means is to, which means those two words are related to each other. The colon between extraneous and foreign also means is to, because those two words are also related to each other. The double colon between monotonous and extraneous means as, which means that the second set of words here are related in the same way that these first two are. So humdrum is to monotonous as extraneous is to foreign is how we say this statement. But how can we prove this is a related analogy? So first we need to look at the first two words, which are humdrum and monotonous. You might be thinking, what do those words even mean? Or you might think, can you say those words again? I don't know how to say them. So there might be many times in this activity where you come across new words that you either don't know what they mean, don't know how to say it, or both. That's totally fine. That's what this activity is for, is to help develop your thinking and develop your spoken and reading vocabulary. So you need to make sure that you have a paper and a pencil with you when completing this activity, because you need to write down any words that you need to look up. To help us look up words in this activity, we're going to be using the resource dictionary.com. The link for this site is in the written directions for the activity, and there will also be a link on each slide. Make sure that when you use this site that you are only using it to look up words and you're not clicking on any of the ads that are popping up. We're using this site as an educational resource, and we need to be using it responsibly. So here you can see I looked up the word humdrum. It means lacking variety, or boring, or dull. But what about monotonous? I also looked up monotonous, and it also says that monotonous is lacking in variety. Both words talked about, humdrum and monotonous, talked about lacking in variety, which means that humdrum and monotonous are synonyms. Now that we know the relationship between the first two words, we need to look at the relationship between the next two words, extraneous and foreign. Remember, since this is an analogy, that means that these words should also be synonyms because they need to be related to each other the same way that humdrum and monotonous were related. That double colon, remember, means as, because the first two words are related in the same way as the next two words. Because humdrum and monotonous are synonyms, extraneous and foreign must also be synonyms. Let's just make sure. So I'm going to head back to dictionary.com to check my thinking. Remember to write down the words you are unfamiliar with so that you know exactly what to look up when you get to the site. So extraneous means not belonging, external, or foreign. Ooh, look, we have foreign listed right as the definition, which means that foreign is a synonym for extraneous. I also looked up foreign just to make sure, and it looks like it means derived from somewhere else or belonging somewhere else. So yes, that would mean it is a synonym with extraneous or not belonging. One more thing about dictionary.com is look at this sound icon. If you are not sure how to pronounce a word, you can click on this sound icon and then it will say the word for you. So you can practice hearing it and saying it correctly. So here is an example of your activity this week. Now that you know what analogies are, this activity will make more sense. So you are going to have 15 slides to complete, but you need to have at least 7 correct and completed. I'll explain that again later so that it makes more sense. So you have 15 slides of incomplete analogies. You need to have a paper and a pencil with you to be writing down the words you don't know. So our first example is feed is to nourish, as ascend is to what? The first thing you need to ask yourself is, what is the relationship between the first 2 members of the analogy? You have the choice of either typing your response in this blank space or you can voice record your response. So I also have that link here to go to dictionary.com. So if you're looking at feed and nourish and you aren't sure what, you might know what feed means and not nourish, or you might know what nourish means and not feed. So in order for you to know how those 2 words are related, you might need to look them up on dictionary.com to know what their relationship is to each other, because you cannot complete the analogy until you know the relationship between the first 2 parts. So after you know the relationship, you either typed it or recorded your voice to talk about how they were related, then you move on to part 2. Here you can see part 2. So this will be the same slide. It's just that I broke it into parts so that you could see. So this is actually how your slide will look. And then after you respond to the top part, down here you can see you have 4 options: descend, hill, steps, and rise. You can move all 4 of these words, and you'll need to move one of them up to complete the analogy. Remember, whatever word you think relates to ascend, they need to relate in the same way that nourish is related to feed. So even though hill, descend, steps, and rise all might be related to ascend in a certain way, you need to make sure, because it's an analogy, that the 2 words need to be related in the same way as feed and nourish. So again, there are 15 slides. You are expected to have at least 7 slides completed and correct by next Monday. Again, that's 7, that's about half, so 15 slides, that's a little under half this week. So as long as you have 7 completed and correct, that counts as having a completed activity this week. There are 15 slides total because you might have time in class to be working on things or extra time at home to be working on this, and if that's the case, you can try for all 15. We want to make sure that we're giving you enough things to do while still having it be challenging to you. So again, 7 is the requirement, and then if you have extra time, try to get all 15 done, see how far you can get. All right? Good luck and have fun completing the analogies.